Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In this video, let us discuss about console methods that every JavaScript developer must know. Now, in web browser console is a tool that basically will help us log information associated with a web page like error, warning, network request. Now, in JavaScript, the console is an object that provides access to the browser debugging console. Now, the console object provides us several different methods which I will go through in this video. So let us go with the very first method. It's known as console.table. So let us start. Console.table, and what it takes as arguments is, the very first argument it takes is table data, and the second one is table columns, which is optional. Now the table data can either be an object or an array. The table columns basically will specify the name of the array property that you want to print in table. It's an optional field and it is used only with array of objects. So let us see one example for this. So I will define an array and I will set it as an array of two objects like this. In this I will define a key called as channel name for the very first object, and I will say div and content web development. Then I will define yet another one of my favorite channels, the Net Ninja, and content web development. Okay, so this is, let me close it using single quotes and let us press enter. So you see a very elegant looking table, and this basically logs the index as the first column, then channel name and the content. And as you can see, we are also getting a log for this as well. So this is our elegant looking console.table that basically displays the array of objects in form of a table. So this is the tabular representation of the data if you want to show it in this way. Now you can see in this example that we are basically passing two arguments, or not arguments, I will say two key value pairs for each object. We are defining the structure of the table by saying that we want channel name, we want content. So this is how our table looks like. Then we have something called as console.time. Now it starts a timer in the console view. So let us start the timer. I will say console.time, and let us do this, and then say console.time end. So this basically console.time, what it does is it starts a timer in the console view. Console.time end basically will give you the default value after which your timer terminated. So it is used to end the timer and display the result in the console. So your timer ran for these many milliseconds that it is showing in the label corresponding to default. Now you can also optionally pass a parameter to the time method. So it is used to give the name to the timer. By default, the name for the timer is default, though you can pass a parameter to it to define the name of the timer, and then it will get displayed, then colon, and whatever time the timer took. Now the next one is, now what I would like to show is, let us make a API call and demonstrate these methods again. Okay, so what I will do is I will basically try to measure how much time it takes for the API call to get resolved. Okay, so we'll make an API call to JSON placeholder fake API, and before starting the API call I will start the timer. Then once we get back the response from the backend, we will end the timer, and then we will log the JSON that we get back in form of an elegant looking table, just like we saw earlier. So let us start. So I will do this entire thing in the console itself. I will create a method called APICall. Now in this APICall method, what I will do is I will first start the timer. So I will say console.time, and here we will be passing a label as I told you. So the time method does take an optional argument in form of a label that you want to designate your timer as. Okay, so API call is about to take off. Then after this, what I will do is I will make the API call using the fetch API. So let me create a fetch API call, https://JSON placeholder .typecode.com/todos, and then this is an API call. So this will basically return us a promise. An async call will take some time to resolve. So basically whatever result you get back, so let me select a specific to do by its ID, and then I will say .then. So we will get a response back from the server, and we will parse it as JSON. And once we get it as JSON, what we will do is we'll simply end the timer and log the result to the console in form of a table. So .then we'll get JSON, and what I will do here is I will say console.time end, and again I will say API call is now done, and console.table JSON. This, okay, so this is how our API call should look like. And let us end the function. Let us press enter, and I will say API call invoke the function. So did anything happen? Let me see. So it says timer API call is now done, does not exist. Okay, so I think for the label we have to use the same label only. Okay, so let me correct this. Since our label has to be unique, so what I will do is API call, now we have to end this API call timer. Okay, so you have to designate it with the very same label that we had defined while defining the timer. So when we are ending the timer, do specify the very same label that we used while creating the timer. Okay, so now you say API call, and you see it gives us the time for which the API call took to basically get back the result back from the server or the fake JSON API that we are using in this case. So this is how I demonstrated the log methods, like the timer method, time method, the time end method, the table method. So next is the console.log method, which you all know. Okay, console.log hello, and this logs something to the console, as simple as it is. Now to give a warning, you have another method called as console.warn. Okay, and within single quotes you will say this is a warning, and press enter. So as you can see, we are getting an exclamation mark showing that this is a warning, and you can see this being highlighted, and it says this is a warning. So these are some of the methods that I wanted to cover. Now this warning method is basically displaying a warning message to the browser console. It is very useful to warn for something like this API is deprecating in futures, any kind of warning that you want to give to the end user, or this attribute is also required for accessibility. Okay, so next is console.error. So whenever you get some error, you might have seen some developers in their code write display the error using this console.error. So we can say console.error API call failed, like this you can say, and you can see we are getting this in red. So this is the danger sign that an error has taken place while making the API call. Now it prints an error message to the browser console. Now to display some information messages to the console, we can use console.info. So I will say console.info. This is a random message. Press enter. So you can see This is just an informatory text that is basically resembling an information that you want to show to the end user. Okay, now what we can do now is let us learn about yet another method called as count method. So it will print the number of time the console.count method is called. So it is very helpful to make sure if your particular function is called once or twice, so you can basically determine how many times your function ran. You can add a label, so it's just like a counter that you can maintain in your memory, that how many times your function is actually running. So you can add a label that will be included in the console. By default, the label default will be added, just like I showed you in the previous methods. So we had a default as the standard default label that we were using till now. So I will define a function called as counter, and we will simply say console.count, and in this I will say function ran, close the curly braces, just invoke the function for the very first time. It says function ran 1, again invoke it, function ran 2, yet another invocation, function ran 3, and this way it continues. Okay, so this is basically counting the number of invocations that you are making to the counter function. Next is the console.clear method. So this is the same method that I was using to clear my console. Okay, like this. So you can also say it like this, console.clear, because everything in this console resembles the console object on which these methods are defined. So you can directly call them using clear, or you can say console.clear, and it clears the console. Now once this method get called, it prints a message in the console. As you can see, console was cleared. Okay, now let us discuss about another method called as console.assert. Now it takes an expression and then a message. So it basically will print a message to the console if an expression evaluates to false. So what I will do is, I will say, so we are testing for a condition. We are trying to do a condition. As you must have seen in test cases that we write, we use this assert keyword to basically set up the test cases. And here we are determining a condition, and based on which we are evaluating whether the condition is true or false, and by that we are displaying a message. So I will define an expression called 2 is greater than 3, and I will say data, and this should assert 2 is not greater than 3, and let us press enter. So you can say the assertion that we made, 2 is not greater than 3, failed. Okay, so 2 is indeed not greater than 3, which is a false assertion because it is not universally correct. As we know that we all know that 3 is greater than 2 and not 2 is greater than 3. So next is the console.group method. So it indicates the start of a message group, and console.groupEnd, it indicates the end of a message group. Okay, so we again can use a label as an optional argument. This is used to give a name to the group, and it is used as an optional field, just like I told you. So what I will do is, I will say console.group. So we are initiating a group, and then I'm saying we are trying to create a group, and I will wrap all these logs in this group, and I will then end the group. So we are about to wrap some logs in our group. The very first log is user, so channel name dev. Okay, and as you can see, this is your wrapper object. In this object, we are wrapping these logs to the console. So the very first log that got wrapped in a group is this, where the key is channel name and the value pertaining to this key is dev. Then what I will do is console.log and another wrapping key value pair we are attaching to this group. So subscribers, not subscribers, so content, say content web development, close this, and then what I will do is I will say console.groupEnd. So this will terminate the group creation, and so this is how our group looks like. So next is the console.group collapsed method. Now this is similar to the console.group method, but it prints the collapsed message group. All the messages are printed inside the group. So what I will do here is I will say console.group collapsed, and here I will say channel topics, press enter. Next is let us do a log in this, and then we will terminate the group again. So we are trying to create a collapsed group and not just a normal group. So I will say console.log the nerdy dev is working on web development stuff, and then we can terminate this. So I will say console.groupEnd. So you can see we created a group, and within which we have this log the nerdy dev is working on web development stuff, and then we terminated the group.